So I'm Maureen Ryan,
I'm Noll Steinweg.
and Noll and I have been working together for the last 4 years in the Cascade and Olympic Mountains. We study the effects of climate change on wetlands up in the mountains, and in particular on amphibians. So Noll, what do you think about when you think about the Cascades?
When I think about the Cascades, I think about how steep they are and how when precipitation falls, either as rain or as snow melts, the water isn't held on the ground for very long, and it rushes down into river valleys and out towards the sea quickly. So there's not a whole lot of time for different animals in the Cascades to use that water. And where the water does accumulate in ponds or in ephemeral tarns, you find there are a lot of animals that gather to use that water. So frogs and salamanders find themselves there, and elk move into the area. Diving ducks, even that are common down in the sound, are found up in the mountain ponds using the water before it goes out to the ocean.
Yeah, I mean, I remember you talking about being in the field, and one of the things we watch for is as these small ponds that are really heavily used by amphibians start to dry, they become smaller, and sometimes it pulls in a bunch of predators. I remember you telling some stories about that.
Yeah, so one interesting thing that happens is if you have a really small, fast-drying pond, so a little ephemeral tarn, and let's say a frog, like a Cascades frog, has decided to lay eggs in that pond. The eggs develop, and the frogs have to metamorphose and then get out of the pond before the pond actually dries. But if the frogs don't develop quickly enough and get out of the pond before it dries, the resulting little puck of dried tadpoles in the bottom of the pond is just it's like an energy bar, like a protein energy bar, and we've found coyote and bobcat tracks coming into the mud around the edge of the small tarns and picking at that little protein puck of tadpoles in the bottom.
Yeah, it makes me feel a little bit better, at least that if they're not making it out as things are drying up, that at least something else is using them. Yeah, I mean, when I think about the Cascades, I just think about their extremeness, and I'm most familiar with Rainier and then with the North Cascades. So, obviously really different landscapes. Rainier is this giant feature. It creates its own weather. It has different kinds of soils. It has a lot of these really neat complexes of wetlands along the sides of the mountains that are really rich amphibian habitat. And then the North Cascades being utterly different, steep, like Noll was talking about, and it takes a lot of work to get in there. And so for us, as a field crew, we, sometimes have to hike for several days to get to our sites. And there's such thinking about amphibians, there's such a range of kinds of sites, from places like Taptoe Lakes that I really love, that are really far up, amazing views of glaciers, and not very many species can live there because it's so extreme. And then these big valleys like Big Beaver that are full of species like toads that, elsewhere are in decline around the West, but I've seen more toads in Big Beaver Valley over the last few years than I've seen anywhere. And it's just really encouraging to see those places and to kind of feel what they're like with the big old trees and these big beaver complexes and toads hopping around everywhere.
It's also interesting, though, to think about how those different systems will respond under climate change. So the high, small, fast-drying ponds versus the lowland or lower land, larger sites that might respond more slowly, and how the different animals that use those sites will be affected differently.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the thing that I worry about the most, and that we're really looking at with our project, is just how's the change in the amount of snowpack, or the proportions of rain versus snow that we get in the Cascades going to affect those little ponds that are often really reliant on snowmelt throughout the summer. So if a lot of that snow turns into rain, that's going to really change those systems, and it means that there will be less of those small habitats for amphibians, and they're going to be more reliant on the big lakes and ponds. Places like North Cascades National Park are really thinking ahead on that, and thinking about how to preserve those larger habitats. And sometimes that means good monitoring, and sometimes it means actually trying to remove introduced fish that will eat the amphibians if they're in there. But those are the kinds of questions that we're asking and thinking about, and then thinking about how, as people and as researchers, can we help support this amazing place.